Greetings once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Midday Talk with Sivu. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us. We truly love and appreciate you. In studio with us today, we have Namhla Ruselo. Sis Namhla, thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for honoring our invitation. We are looking forward to hearing so much from you and be inspired.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let us read the bio of Sis Namhla. Namhla is the founder and managing director of Elimu, a social-oriented consultancy offering high-impacting solutions to corporate companies and non-profit organizations alike, specializing in project management, people development, corporate social investment management, fundraising and monitoring and evaluation. This is a lot.
It is.
This is a lot.
It is.
All right, so Sis Namhla, tell us, where did the heart of business begin?
The heart of business began in growing up in PE, or growing up as Swede. I think over the years and seeing how stagnant change and development became, I always had this idea of what would it be like to create a moving type of business that connects different solutions towards development of communities, right? So it's been growing with me. I think it revealed itself over time when I went to school and I studied, when I started working and the different spaces I was exposed to. And so it became exactly that. So it's a combination of, I think, my life experiences, a combination of my professional experience as well. But ultimately, the pinnacle of it has always been to create solutions that move communities forward.
So, Sis Namhla, what did you study? Because this is quite a lot. What did you study?
So I did a BA in psychology at the University of Wits, and the second thing that I studied was business analysis. So all of those things put together, I was privileged enough to have been exposed a lot in development kind of work. Whether it's education, whether it's entrepreneurship development, but that was always the things that I was exposed to. And so project management was always a vehicle that was going to enable me to do these things. And so that's how I came up with all of that.
So, Elimu, when was it birthed?
Elimu was birthed in 2015.
Okay.
So I had done the, traveling, the working, the understanding of, what the problem is. And now it was time to the vision and the thinking to come to life. So 2015, I sat down and opened my laptop and I started writing.
Wow.
One of the things that kept coming up was knowledge. I thought about this idea of how do we make knowledge accessible. So if we're trying to create solutions, half the time we don't have enough of the knowledge to understand the depth of the problem, but also we don't have enough of the knowledge to be able to formulate solution. So the entire time I kept thinking about this, there was, an appearance of a calabash. And I thought to myself, I would imagine, someone putting in different types of paper. And that paper would be project management. That paper would be, facilitation. That paper would be, market research. I kept thinking about these things. And I thought, so if I were to walk into a client with this calabash and they would literally pick out a paper, and this paper would then, give a solution to this thing that they're looking for, then that's when the Elimu idea really came to life. So it was in 2015. In that 2015, I had resigned from full-time employment to start this business. And truly, like all things, everything as you go along kind of develops itself, or it kind of becomes clearer as you move closer to it. It's a thing that I always remember, which is that the thing that you're seeking is also seeking you.
Yeah.
So that was, for me and Elimu Hub, that was the thing, which was that the one thing that I was always clear about in my life was that I wanted to create solutions.
Wow. So the name Elimu Hub, Elimu specifically, I heard it's a Swahili.
Yes.
Tell us about the name.
So, Elimu, how did I come up? Okay, there were two things that I wanted. I wanted my company to be Pan-African. That was the first thing that I knew. I wanted the solutions to not only be focused on the conditioning of South Africa. I wanted the solutions to be focused on, various spaces like different countries. So, and I mean, I'd had the opportunity to travel and understand, the different constraints, and some of them are similar. So as I sat down trying to find names, and I remember submitting, when you start a company, you submit a couple of names, and then there's one that they come up with. And I think I had a good feeling about Elimu because of the fact that I wanted my business to be Pan-African.
Yeah.
And I chose, and it was a perfect name because it means knowledge in Swahili. So I put it out there literally to the universe, and I remember thinking about and writing it down also, and I was like, I like the ring of it, right? And I sent it off, and they came back to me and they said, this is the name that we chose, and I was like, yes, and this is the one that we go with. So so Elimu is exactly that. I wanted my company to be Pan-African, and what a way to clearly say that with exactly that name.
Wow. So Sisi, how easy or how difficult is it to start a business?
Starting a business is, I think at first you go through phases. I think the first phase I went through was the passion.
Okay.
So I was passionate, right? I was happy. I was doing everything that I wanted to do. That list was longer.
Okay.
So, there were many things that I wanted to do. So it was easy because it was driven a lot by the passion.
Okay.
The why seemed clearer, and the how was constant, right? Over time, I think with struggles, then it became difficult, because then you ask the questions of, is this really what people need?
Okay.
The second would be, are we really breaking even? Are we even making profit here? Is it worth having resigned from work? And I mean, in 2015, relatively the economy was different. So I was asking myself, and I mean, my savings were being depleted. So I thought, the situation of this business that's not making any profit. So I continued and I continued. I remember my mother saying to me that it's you, right? It's become a part of you. So you can't really give it up. And I remember the various points in the journey of entrepreneurship when I went back to full-time work, when I was like, okay, bills have to be paid, things need to be done now, and I went back to full-time employment, but I still kept at it. So it's phases. You go through the easy phase, which is the admin, so setting up the business, right, getting it out there, getting people interested, talking about it more. And then there's the next level. The next level is, how do you sustainably grow the business? And I think that's the most difficult part. That's the part that needs money. That's the part that needs a lot more solutions than you have at your disposal. So that was always my biggest thing, which is that how do you sustainably build your business?
So Siswam, we tend to have business ideas, and then we fail to implement them because sometimes we're waiting for funding. What was it with your case? Did you save for the business, or did you also apply for funding, hopefully hoping that they're going to respond, positively, all that? What was the situation with you?
So when I first started, I used my savings. It's a known fact that when women start businesses, the first port of call for them to finance their businesses is their savings. So I used my savings, and in as much as I tried over time to apply for financing, there was just never anything for me that appealed to the kind of needs that I had financially. So when you sell solutions, which is ultimately what my business does, it becomes difficult to get financing because it's not a product, it doesn't have a barcode, right? So you can't say, I'm going to sell in 3 months 6 units and be able to make this profit and then, you know. So it's challenging in that way. So I always say that how you finance your business is based solely on what exactly is your business. And some people are very wise in that they'll have maybe the kickstart, and then as it grows, and they'll go and get structured financing and all of those things. So yeah, for me, financing was the first port of call was my savings, and then followed by that was how do I sustainably grow the business, and then thinking about what products are available from banks, from development agencies, that kind of thing, to help the kind of business that I have. So you start, that's the most important part. And as you go on, solutions and financing comes up over time.
I heard that, when you're starting a business, the first 3 years roughly, you don't make profit. How true is that?
That's 100%.
Oh my God. How do you survive?
100%. That is true. And I mean, it was even difficult for me because I had to, in the first 3 years, I had to quickly because my competition were, big firms, so people who had been in the game and they had a lot more money and that kind of thing. And so the more I went and searched for work, submitting proposals, that kind of thing, I realized the people that I was in the room with, which is that there are people who are seasoned entrepreneurs, people who know how the business is. And I thought to myself, then if I give up now, then it means that 10 or so years from now, I'm not going to be able to be the seasoned person in the room, right? So the first 3 years are difficult. You don't make profit, you don't, there's so many things. But that shouldn't deter you, because the difference between myself and someone else who comes from, an established company is time, really. Because the more I interacted with people around the development space and, various work that we were doing, I realized that more of this is the same, right? We're speaking the same language. It's just that I come as one person in a small company and they come as a group of people in a bigger company. So that it shouldn't deter you. Yes, be realistic. I think that was the most important thing that my coach told me, was be very realistic. When you see the signs that it's becoming too much to move, make the adjustments that you have to make. And the adjustment that I made was to take time off and go back to full-time work. So the first 3 years is difficult, without a doubt. But you don't get deterred by that.
Sisi, you mentioned something about you first did research before you were able to do your company, to commence it, sorry. So how important is it to first do research before you commence any product or any company? How important, because many times we are so much excited about the idea, and little do we know that maybe this idea that excites us is not what the market really wants. So how important it is to first do research, and then your excitement can come along as you see that what you're going to produce is needed by the company. Sorry, the people,
So yes, research is important, 100%. One of the things that I believe in is that, when you're creating a solution, you're not creating it out of a void. So you know the problem, you understand it intimately. You know exactly who the solution is for, so who you are creating the business for. Case in point, if there's a woman who sells vegetables at the corner of a particular township, one thing she knows for sure is that the reason why she's selling vegetables in that corner is that it's a convenience service for either mothers who've come back from work or fathers who've come late, then they quickly send their children to go buy a vegetable, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that is the exact purpose of that business. However, as you go on, you realize that, well, now there are other shops bigger that are available to service people. So I have to change my offering. That also requires another set of research work. So it's saying, yes, I have, solved this problem, but now there's a bigger chain that's developing over time. So I have to think more now towards, okay, how do I adapt to that change, or how do I then continue, right? So it's all of those. So there's segments of, studying your market. There's segments of doing feasibility studies. There's a time when you know that the market is saturated for your business, right? Where you are like, okay, in as much as I've decided to sell T-shirts, but within this radius, there are 50 other people who are selling T-shirts.
Yeah.
So how does my T-shirts then stand out? Then research then differs, right, in between the products that you have. So it's very, very important. The other part is that your business will not be the same over the years.
All right.
As you evolve, as you learn, as you experience, it also shows that you know better and you do things differently as opposed to the time when you were starting. So it's very important also to note in the journey as you research and have experience, you note that things are different, and so this is how we are adjusting to that.
Wow. So Siswam, how do you get clients? Because when you start a business, especially your one, you need clients. How do you market yourself to be able to get good clients who can help grow the company?
So getting clients is a key point of understanding who you are targeting your business for.
All right.
So a lot of the work that I do is for corporates, a lot of the work that I do is for NGOs. So it's spending a lot of time understanding those environments, understanding where the gaps are, and then going to those people and saying, hey, I see that you're doing wonderful work, and I think that I can partner with you in order to be able to enhance this type of work.
Wow.
Here's the service that I do. These are the things that I would like to be able to present to you, and that kind of thing. So that's, for me, getting business has always been understanding exactly who my market is, who's the ideal client, and what are their needs, and what in the varying solutions would they be most interested in.
Wow.
The simplest strategy.
I love the fact that you are saying that you go to the companies.
Yes.
They don't come to you.
Yes.
So you initiate
You have
the
to.
relationship. Wow, I love that. I love that, truly. Because sometimes we sit there and we are hoping that a miracle will happen, that companies will just start to recognize us without us doing an effort, But I see something that is common. I don't know about you, John. Our people that we interview, our guests here, they're saying the same thing, that you go to the companies,
Yes.
and so that you market yourself by doing that. So what else do you use besides going there? What other marketing do you have?
So the other marketing is on social media, and on social media, I don't know what the word I could use. I'd say employ. So on social media, I employ a different strategy, which is that on the work that we have done, how do we then create it and connect it to community? Because at the end of the day, this is why I'm a socially oriented consultancy. So companies are in need of people who do the work that I do and the solutions that I deliver, but how do those solutions benefit community? So I'm likely to send that out onto social media. And then based on the information that people are exposed to, someone would say, hey, we're looking for someone who does this particular thing that you were doing. Or it's been interesting to see your work, we'd like to talk to you, that kind of thing. So, and also this opportunity as well is another one, right? Where being on your radio station and speaking to you guys and having different people being aware of what it is that I do, that then also creates the kinds of leads that get me to the work that I would like to do.
All right. So tell us about Elimu Hub CC. What do you do there? What is it that you do? I see there's a lot.
There is a lot.
Take us step by step.
Step by step. So I am in the startup phase, which is that you do everything, right? How I created Elimu Hub was that I never wanted to walk into a room of a client alone. So in as much as I offer the project management, the strategy, the corporate social investment type of work and monitoring and evaluation, I try as much as I can to connect with smaller businesses so that we can be able to create the kind of impact that we need. So the idea generation, the consultancy, being able to meet one-on-one and have meetings with clients, I will do. As I'm developing the solution, I'll think, there's someone who does this very, very well. Call them into the room and sit down with them and say, okay, this is, the kind of service that I'm trying to deliver, and this is where I'm having the need to have your expertise on board. So it works in that the calabash in itself carries other entrepreneurs who do this work. So I'm a managing director, yes, and the founder. The first person that you'll see when you're either calling me or when you're speaking face to face to me. When we deliver the solution, I'm usually with other entrepreneurs as well, because that is by design. It's purposeful, right? That is how it is a social oriented consultancy. So it renders itself like the Uber technique, if you were to, where really you do not own heads, but the solution is connected and created by different people with varying skill sets. That's the thing that clients have always come back to me and they've said, we appreciate that about you, which is that there's different kinds of views around the room that we get in the solutions that you deliver. So that is what I do. I'm the managing director. I work with 2 teams who are in Johannesburg, and they are the monitoring and evaluation core team, because that I needed to have in-house.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, you said you're working with corporate companies and non-profit organizations alike. What motivated you to include non-profit organizations as well?
Non-profit organizations, because they are the closest to communities. Right? If you needed to know anything about a community, you need to walk into the nearest NGO, right? The nearest church, if you will. That's where you're going to find what the pain points are for the community. It was very intentional for me to pick working with NPOs. It also comes from my work experience. I had 5 years of edu-focused work for non-profit organizations. And I understood exactly what the frustrations are, because I'd worked in an NGO where there are no budgets, where short on staff, where the problem is then foot soldiers were trying to fix it, but how do we then build capacity in order for us to stretch further into where our communities are. The second part of it is that organizations, corporate companies, private sector really wants to do a lot more community-focused work. So who's the person that they're going to speak to? NPOs. So being able to bridge that gap as we move through the work that we're doing is also another extension of being connected to creating development for communities.
Wow. Okay, you're speaking about here fundraising and monitoring evaluation. Let's talk about the fundraising aspect.
Okay, fundraising it's a skill. It's a very scarce skill, and for me, fundraising is basically how do we understand exactly what the kind of funds that organizations are looking for in order for them to sustainably generate those funds. What case in point is fundraising is one thing that NPOs are really, really interested in. So it's walking into the organization and sitting down and seeing where the blockages are, where the key constraints are, and the limits, and then being able to say, okay, if we were to get the kind of engagement and finance, what would 5 years look like of that? And then with that, I take and go to a person who's offering funds and say, okay, we've got this fantastic organization. They need this fund for a period of this time in order for them to be able to fix 1, 2, and 3, and this is how we do it. So fundraising is the ability to communicate what an organization needs to someone who has the funds.
Wow. I love this, guys. Okay, you're saying that you specialize in project management and people development. Okay, let's first talk about project management. What can you tell us about it?
Project management is literally the start of, it could be a party, for instance. That's managing a project because the party has a start and an end. Project management for us is being able to assist someone or a company or an organization to be able to plan better,
All right.
to implement strategies better, to focus on the key timelines and milestones in order to achieve a specific goal. So that is what we do in project management.
Wow. Okay, how do you develop people?
Developing people is being able to build capacity. For instance, again, I'll make the case of the NPOs. It's knowing that the difference between, a very well-run organization is capacity, right? And walking in and being able to talk to people and understand their problems, and also being able to say, okay, if we were to see this differently, this is what it looks like, right? Taking you away from the constraints of that job or the constraints of the developing scale of the organization. What does it look like to be able to do your job differently in the constraints that you have, right? It's also being able to hear what people are saying. I think the most important thing about people development is empathy. It's listening, right? It's being able to create the simplest solution at the most minute level of the problem. It's also being able to create teams, right? It's being able to find the right people at the right time. That's what people development for me has always been. My background is also in human resources. So it's those things that I understand more. It's also being able to design the kind of solutions that are people focused first. And in order for me to be able to do that, or to assist companies to do that, it's being able to sit and understand that this is where the key constraints of development are.
Wow. So, Sisi, as a woman and an entrepreneur, what are some of the challenges that you came across? Sometimes we want to do these things, or perhaps we've started, but then because of certain things, we're like, no, I can't take it, So what were some of the things that you came across, and how did you overcome them?
Not seeing enough women in business, I think was one of the biggest things that was a challenge for me. I needed to be able to see other women who are in the business space doing, either the same thing, or, being able to have someone to call on and say, I have a problem. In as much as there are networks and associations, but majority of the time, they're not accessible. And so that was, I think, the first challenge for me. The second one was, it's hard, entrepreneurship is a lonely journey, right? And it's hard to find people to coach you, role models, people to coach you, that kind of thing. And so it was another thing. The third thing is balancing time. We think we have a lot of time, but we don't. And so it was difficult at first. It was one of the biggest challenges that I had. And the last one is funding, right? Financing a business, growing a business. You start a business, yes, but then you need to grow it.
Yeah.
And so the gap between starting and ultimately growing the business is where I think there's been a lot of challenge for me.
So how did you overcome that? You touched on a very, I believe, important aspect, and you said that sometimes, we don't have people who can mentor us. How did you overcome that?
I was lucky enough to have been invited to a competition that was, at the end of it, you'd be assigned the mentor.
All right.
And I entered the competition. I pitched for my business, but I didn't win. So one of the women who were on the panel was interested in the work that I do, and she called me and she said, "I'd love to coach you, let's speak." And so that's where my relationship with my coach and mentor began, through that competition. And I must say it was one of the things that were a blessing in disguise, is that, and as much as I have her, when I have a problem, I go to her and I'm like, okay, this is where I am now, and I seem to have a block. And she'll do the thing that I needed the most, to be able to sustain my business and also to sustain my ideas. She would literally take me through it and say, maybe there's a way that you're not looking at it. Right? And I think that's very important. It's also important to have someone to call on and be like, it's been a terrible 3 months. And they'll calm you down. Okay, look, let's go back to your goals and your plans. One of the most important things that I don't want to forget is that even in the search, because I know a lot of people would search and go find someone who's to mentor them, it's very important to know what your plan is for you and your mentor, the kind of relationship that you want, right? To go with that in hand and say, look, I'd like for you to mentor me for this period of time, and these are the plans that I have, and this is how I would like for you to support me in achieving these plans, to be able to hold you accountable, to also be able to vouch for you. So when you are going to different spaces and going to interviews or going to get work, submit proposals, then they'll be the kind of person you have on call to say, yes, that's a good person to have in your company, or that's a good person to have, to build partnership with for a business. So for me and my coach, it was one of the most important things to have, which is the plan of how do we make this relationship work for both of us.
Wow. So sometimes you can have the dream, have the passion, but you need assistance.
Yes.
Wow, I love that. I think, many times, I don't know whether it's pride or something. We think we have it all, we know it all, we can do it all, and, sometimes we need to be helped. And you mentioning some wonderful things, that it even helps that she can vouch for you.
Yes.
Wow, I love that.
Yes.
Okay, so you also mentioned that not seeing many women played a role in you, feeling how I wish. How did you manage all those emotions and eventually pass them?
It's also very important to know that the more you go to spaces, the more you share the information, the more there will be people who participate in those spaces. So as far and wide as I'd gone, I made sure that I would take a friend with, or I would share the information of a particular event, so that the next time I won't be the only one there. It is unfortunate that we are, living in times of inequality, and we're living in times of, gaps, right, in representation particularly. The second thing was, a lot of the women that I was aware of or that I had seen were not accessible. So it was also the accessibility factor, which is that I am aware that you're a phenomenal businesswoman, but I don't necessarily have access to you. And so the opportunity then to pass on wisdom and share experiences is limited. One of the things that I created, which is a social club, is Tales Between Women. And Tales Between Women is that kind of platform that I yearned for. And because it wasn't there, I created it. To be able to have space where different kinds of women, young women, older women, sit around the room and we talk about our experiences. It could be either business, it could be either life experiences, or in the world of work, being able to have the conversation and have that connection that says, hey, I started a business 3 years ago and I failed, right? Being able to go into that space knowing that people are going to listen to you and help you back up into your dream. And so that is how I navigated that in particular.
Wow. So, Sis, where can people find you?
People can find me on Facebook and on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram. Social networks is where they can find me. There's my page on Instagram, which is Elimu Hub SA. And there's on Twitter as well, it's Elimu Hub ZA. And on Facebook, it's Elimu Hub.
All right. So is there a number that people can call you, or is it just the social networks platforms?
Yes, there's a number that people can call me. It's my business line, actually. Should I give the number?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. My business line is 083 405 9277. And people can get in touch with me then, and also on email, which is Namhla at elimuhub.co.za.
Wow, amazing. This one, what can you tell our listeners? We are wrapping it up. Thank you so much. I think I always say the same things because, guys, really, I get so motivated, so inspired listening to great people, great women and men of God, just sharing their stories with us. But now, as we are wrapping it up, we will just hear a word or a paragraph or even an essay from Sis Namhla to anyone who wants to start a business or who has started that business. What can you tell that person?
Start.
Wow.
Just start. Right? It's important to just start. I think everything else over time, if you are consistent at it, it bears fruit. So just start. Also, trust your faith, trust your instincts, right? When you know the exact thing that you need to do, and it's clear, and it's a voice that's not going away. My mother always says that God is always speaking. It just depends on are you listening, or constantly speaking. And so some of these ideas and these situations that we're in are also enablers for us to be able to start. The important thing is to start. So start and dare greatly. Daring greatly doesn't mean that you're not going to fail. Doesn't mean that you're not afraid. It does not mean that it's not going to be hard. It means that with all of those things, you continue. You consistently, and you start and you continue.
Wow.
So that is my word.
Thank you so much, Sis Namhla. It's been a wonderful opportunity being with you. You sharing your story. I stand. Thank you so much. Let us listen to you.